The morning of my birthday trip started like every other we're totally fine family morning. Chaos, crumbs, and a level of noise that could easily qualify as an Olympic sport. Our youngest was sprinting through the hallway in one sock, holding the other sock like it was a rare artifact he planned to auction off later. Our oldest had built a small city out of Lego right in the doorway, because nothing says safe passage like a plastic obstacle course designed by a tiny engineer with no concern for adult survival. And Marin, my wife, stood at the kitchen counter with that calm, polished face people wear when they're trying very hard not to be caught thinking, I could disappear and nobody would find me for weeks. "Did you pack the kids' sweaters?" she asked without looking at me. "I packed civilization," I said. "Snacks, chargers, wipes, an emergency bag of goldfish crackers. If we end up stranded, I can trade those for shelter." She smiled a little. Not a real smile. More like her facial muscles remembered what happiness used to feel like and twitched out of nostalgia. I should probably explain the vibe in our house for the past year. If you've ever lived in a place where the air feels professionally awkward, where every sentence is cautious, every sigh is meaningful, and the way someone closes the fridge deserves its own emotional analysis. Yeah. We didn't have one big explosion, no dramatic cheating reveal, no screaming match where the neighbors called the cops and somebody cried into a decorative pillow. It was worse. It was the slow, boring kind of dying. The kind that doesn't make good movies. The kind that makes you question if you're even allowed to be unhappy because technically nothing happened. It started with little fights, the dishes, the laundry, the way I folded towels, which apparently screamed emotionally unavailable male to her. Then it became distance. Then it became logistics. Marin and I stopped sounding like partners. We sounded like two polite strangers sharing a mortgage and some small humans who required constant feeding. I tried, by the way, I really did. I asked her out to dinner once, just the two of us. She said, "I'm exhausted." I said, "We can go somewhere quiet, no crowds." She said, "I don't have the bandwidth for this." I suggested therapy. She said, "I don't think talking to a stranger is going to fix you." Not us. Me. Like I was a software update she regretted downloading. So after a while, I stopped trying as hard. Not because I didn't care, because I did care. And it turns out banging your head against a brick wall doesn't build character. It builds headaches. Still, from the outside, we looked normal. We went to birthdays. We hosted family dinners. We took pictures in front of pumpkins in the fall like we were starring in some suburban happiness commercial. And now we were packing for a weekend at my parents' house. It was supposed to be simple. Drive up, eat cake, pretend we weren't slowly turning into roommates with legal benefits, then drive back. Marin walked past me, carrying a duffel bag that looked heavier than it needed to be for one weekend. I noticed it because I've learned to notice things. When you live with someone who's emotionally distant, you become a detective by necessity, not because you're paranoid, because you're trying to survive. "You packed enough to move out," I said casually. She didn't blink. "I like to be prepared." "For what?" I asked. "A surprise blizzard? A spontaneous international flight? A new identity in Canada?" Her eyes flicked to mine for half a second. A look. Too quick to call it anything but too sharp to ignore. Then she turned away and said, "Can you get the kids in the car?" Sure, I could do that. I could do everything, apparently. I could father, husband, chauffeur, therapist, and part-time emotional punching bag. Very versatile. Great skill set. Terrible benefits. The drive started the way our drives always started. The kids arguing over who breathed near who, the backseat sounding like a zoo, and Marin staring out the window like she was auditioning for a music video called "I Married the Wrong Man." I kept my eyes on the road and my tone light. "You know," I said, "I'm really excited. Nothing says birthday like driving 2 hours to sit on my dad's couch while he tells me how gas used to be 70 cents. She replied. There was no anger in her voice. That was the weird part. If she'd been furious, I could have at least assigned her an emotion. But she was quiet, focused, like her mind was somewhere else, like she was rehearsing. I glanced at her. You okay? I'm fine. That sentence is the most efficient lie in human history. Fine, I echoed. Great. Love that for us. She gave me a small smile again. Not warm, not cruel, just controlled. The kids fell asleep about 40 minutes in, which created the sudden silence that married people fear more than financial audits. Silence makes you hear everything. The engine hum, the tires, your own thoughts, the distance between two bodies in the same car. I cleared my throat. So, I said, keeping my voice casual, how's work? Busy. Friends? Busy. Existential dread? She exhaled. Cole. My name, spoken like a warning label. What? I said. I'm trying to connect. You told me you wanted me to communicate more. I never said that. I laughed once, short and sharp. Right. That was probably my imagination, like your affection. She turned her head toward me fully now. Her gaze was calm, which somehow made it worse. You always do that, she said. You turn everything into a joke. Yeah, I said. Because if I don't, I turn it into a breakdown, and I'm trying to keep the kids' childhood free of Dad's nervous collapse, you know? Her jaw tightened, but she didn't snap. She didn't raise her voice. She just looked forward again and said very softly, We'll talk later. There it was again. That tone. The one that didn't belong to a normal weekend trip. The one that sounded like paperwork. Like a decision already made. I didn't press her. Not because I was scared. Because I've learned that pressing Marin is like pressing an elevator button that's already lit. It doesn't make it come faster. It just makes you look desperate. So I drove. And I watched her out of the corner of my eye. The way her fingers tapped her thigh, like a metronome. The way she inhaled, slowly, like she was practicing calm. The way she checked her phone, not messaging, not scrolling, just checking, like she was waiting for a signal. By the time we pulled into my parents' driveway, the kids were awake and hyper again. My dad was already outside like he'd been standing there for an hour guarding the property. And my mom burst through the front door wearing an apron like she'd been preparing for a cooking show. Birthday boy, my mom shouted. My dad clapped my shoulder hard enough to dislocate nostalgia. Look at you, another year older, still got all your hair, must be nice. Give it time, I said. I live with 2 kids and a woman who thinks my breathing is a personality flaw. Marin's smile appeared again, perfectly timed, perfectly fake. My mom hugged her. Marin, sweetheart, you look so good. How are you doing? Good, Marin said smoothly. Just busy. The same lie, but dressed up for company. Inside, the house smelled like roast chicken, butter, and the kind of warm comfort you can't buy at a store. My parents had no idea. To them, we were fine. We were a normal couple. We brought the kids, we smiled, we stood close enough for pictures. My mom put candles on a cake like it was a sacred ritual. My dad poured drinks. The kids ran around like they owned the place. And for a moment, just a moment, I almost believed it. Maybe I'd been overthinking. Maybe the last year had just been stress. Maybe we could reset. Then I saw Marin's duffel bag in the hallway, still zipped, still sitting by the door like it had a job interview somewhere else. And I watched her face at the dinner table. She was present, laughing at the right times, asking my mom about recipes, complimenting the food. But her eyes were different. They kept flicking toward me, then away, like she was waiting for the right opening, like she was counting down in her head. When my mom finally brought out the cake and everyone started singing, I looked at Marin. Her hand rested lightly on my shoulder for the performance, fingers gentle, touch empty. The candles glowed. The room felt warm. And under that warmth, I felt something cold moving closer. Marin leaned in slightly, her voice low enough that only I could hear. After cake, she whispered, I need to say something. I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. I just looked at her. Okay, I said quietly. Her eyes held mine for a beat, steady, prepared. Then she turned toward the table, lifted her glass like she was about to give a toast, and I knew with a clarity so sharp it almost made me laugh that my birthday wasn't the celebration. It was the stage. Everyone finished singing like this was a perfectly normal birthday, and not the emotional equivalent of standing on very thin ice. My mom clapped her hands together. Make a wish. I looked at the candles, small and bright and optimistic in a way I no longer trusted. There's a strange moment in adult life when you realize wishes don't really work anymore. You don't wish for toys or bikes or snow days. You wish for quiet, for honesty. I leaned forward and blew the candles out anyway. Everyone cheered. My dad handed me a knife like this was a sacred ceremony instead of a man cutting sugar in front of witnesses. Big slice, he said. It's your day. My day. Right. I started cutting the cake while the kids argued about frosting distribution like junior attorneys preparing a lawsuit. Maren stood beside me, smiling at the exact moments a smiling wife is supposed to smile. Her hand rested lightly on my back, gentle, careful, completely empty. If warmth could be faked, this would be the gold standard. Plates were passed around. Forks clinked. My mom kept talking about how fast the kids were growing, which is the parental version of small talk when nobody wants to mention anything real. For a few minutes, the scene held together. Perfect lighting, perfect timing, perfect illusion. Then Maren set her fork down. It was a small sound, soft, polite. But somehow the whole table felt it. She reached for her glass. Calm, steady, prepared. And suddenly I understood something very clearly. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't emotional. This was scheduled. Maren looked around the table with that same composed expression she used at school meetings and polite social events. The face of a reasonable adult about to say something difficult but necessary. I want to say something, she said. My mom's smile stayed in place, but her eyes sharpened just a little. My dad stopped chewing. The kids kept eating because children are beautifully unaware of emotional earthquakes. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't rescue the moment. Part of me was curious how far she'd go if nobody stopped her. Maren's gaze flicked to me for half a second, like she was checking whether I'd interrupt. I didn't. So she continued. Her voice was calm, professional almost. I need a little time, she said. Just a week, to think, to understand what I really want, and whether I can keep living in this marriage the way it is. Silence didn't fall. It arrived, heavy, careful, absolute. My mom blinked like she'd misheard a word in a foreign language. A week. For what? She asked quietly. Maren didn't look at her. She kept looking straight ahead, like this was easier if she didn't see faces. To decide, she said, if I want to continue this marriage. There are moments when time slows down, not in a dramatic movie way, in a very practical way, where your brain suddenly starts recording details you didn't know you'd need. The kids finally noticed the silence. Our oldest looked between us. Are we still having cake? My mom inhaled sharply, like she was about to fix everything with sheer maternal authority. Maren, sweetheart, she said carefully, maybe this isn't the best moment to... It's the honest moment, Maren replied, still calm, still controlled. No tears, no shaking voice, just clarity delivered like a meeting agenda. I almost admired the efficiency. My dad looked at me now, waiting. For anger, for protest, for something loud and masculine and cinematic. Instead, I took a slow sip of water. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's exhaustion. And I had been tired for a very long time. So, I said evenly, setting the glass down, you need a week. Maren nodded once, relieved I wasn't shouting. Yes. To think. Yes. And during this week, I asked, you'll be... where? With my sister, she said. Already prepared. Already answered. Of course. Everything about this had the smooth edges of a plan rehearsed in advance. I nodded slowly. like we were discussing travel arrangements instead of the quiet demolition of a family. "Okay," I said. That was it. One word. Soft. Simple. Final in a way nobody at the table understood yet. My mom turned to me, eyes wide. "Cole, say something." "I did," I said gently. She looked like she might cry. My dad looked like he wanted to stand up and fix this with volume alone. But the strange thing was, I felt calm. Not the numb, shocked calm people talk about after disasters. A clear calm, like fog lifting. Because in that moment, something finally made sense. This wasn't confusion. It wasn't stress. It was an exit. And she'd been walking toward it for months. Maren studied my face now, searching. I think she expected resistance, emotion, some proof that I was still fighting for us. Instead, she found stillness, and that unsettled her more than anger ever could. "I'll pack a few things," she said quietly. My mom made a small, broken sound. The kids looked confused, like the rules of reality had changed without warning. Maren stood, chair sliding softly against the floor. She walked to the hallway, picked up the bag that had clearly been waiting longer than anyone realized, and slipped on her coat. I followed her, not because I planned to stop her, just because some moments deserve witnesses. At the door, she paused. For a second, the calm mask cracked just enough to show uncertainty underneath. "This isn't final," she said. "I just need space." Space. Such a gentle word for distance measured in emotional miles. "I understand," I said. And the strange thing was, I meant it. I myself needed this time to understand whether it was necessary to save this marriage. She searched my face one last time, like she was trying to find the version of me who would beg her to stay. That man had existed once. He just wasn't here anymore. "Okay," she whispered. Then she opened the door. Cold evening air slipped inside, brushing past us like a quiet reminder that seasons change whether you're ready or not. She stepped out. The door closed. I stood there for a moment, hand still resting on the wood, listening to the fading echo of footsteps that didn't come back. Behind me, the house was silent. In front of me, the night was quiet. And somewhere in the space between those two silences, I felt it for the first time. Not loss, not anger, just stillness. The kind of quiet you don't notice until the noise is finally gone. The first morning without her felt unfamiliar, not painful, not dramatic, just quietly out of place. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, staring at a ceiling I hadn't looked at in years, trying to remember when exactly my life had started feeling like something that belonged to someone else. From the kitchen downstairs came the soft sounds of morning, cups touching plates, the low hum of the coffee maker, my mom moving around with the careful energy of someone pretending everything is normal so it might become true. No careful listening for Maren's footsteps in the hallway. No silent guessing about her mood before the day even started. No tension waiting at the breakfast table like an invisible guest. Just distance, clean and simple. For the first time in months, I could breathe in the morning without wondering what version of the day I was about to walk into. I sat up slowly, listening to the quiet house that used to mean safety when I was a kid, and now just felt like temporary shelter. Downstairs, I found my dad reading the news like the fate of the nation depended entirely on his personal attention. He glanced up at me over his glasses. "You sleep?" he asked. "Enough to remain legally conscious," I said. He nodded like that was a perfectly acceptable medical condition. My mom turned from the stove with a soft smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "There's coffee," she said gently. "And eggs. You should eat." Translation: I don't know how to help you, but I can at least feed you. The kids were already at the table, happily unaware that their family structure had entered a trial separation phase before sunrise. "Mom coming back today?" the youngest asked, mouth already full of something that used to be considered food. "Not today," I said. "Tomorrow? We'll see." He accepted that answer with the quiet resilience children develop when adults start speaking in careful half-truth. Weekends at my parents' house used to mean cartoons, too much sugar, and my dad pretending he understood modern technology. Now it meant something else entirely. Time stretching in strange directions, every hour slightly heavier than it should be. Nobody mentioned Marin directly after that. My mom kept the conversation safely parked on neutral topics. Weather, pancakes, how tall the kids were getting, whether the neighbor's dog had finally learned not to bark at invisible enemies. My dad asked if I wanted to watch the game later, in the same tone a doctor might use when suggesting rest after bad news. Normality, carefully performed. I appreciated the effort. I really did. But silence has weight. And in that kitchen it sat at the table with us, drinking coffee, pretending not to listen. After breakfast, the kids disappeared into the living room, leaving a trail of crumbs that could probably be studied by future archaeologists. My mom began washing dishes that didn't really need washing. My dad folded the newspaper with unnecessary precision, and I stood there holding a mug that had long since gone cold, realizing something simple and uncomfortable. Nothing dramatic had happened. No shouting, no slammed doors, no final words echoing in the hallway, just a quiet sentence at a dinner table, and an even quieter absence the next morning. Strange how something can end without looking like an ending. I stepped outside for air. The backyard looked exactly the same as it had 20 years ago. Same fence, same tired tree, same patch of grass that never quite decided whether it wanted to live. Morning light, calm and indifferent, covered everything evenly. Birds continued their tiny daily routines like the concept of marriage had never existed. The world, as usual, was not personally invested in my problems. I took a slow breath, and that's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Leo. Leo is the kind of friend every man needs. Loyal, direct, and emotionally subtle as a brick through a window. You busy? Not really. I'm at my parents' place on the weekend. Why? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then another message. I don't know if I should send this. That sentence has never introduced good news in the history of communication. Send it, I wrote. A second later, a screenshot arrived. Instagram story. Dim lighting, bar background, music I could practically hear through the pixels. And there, slightly off-center, laughing at something outside the frame, was Marin. Too close to a man I'd never seen before. Not inappropriate enough for court, not innocent enough for sleep. I didn't react right away, didn't swear, didn't throw the phone, didn't feel the cinematic punch to the chest movies promise. I just looked, zoomed in once, then out again, like maybe distance would change the meaning. It didn't. Leo's next message came fast. I'm sorry, man. I didn't know if you knew. I typed back after a minute. I think I know now. He sent a long message after that. Offers to talk, to come over, to do the traditional male ritual of sitting in silence while pretending not to have feelings. I appreciated it. I really did. But something unexpected was happening inside me. I wasn't falling apart. I wasn't even surprised. Because the truth is, the week had never been about thinking. It was about leaving. There's a strange clarity that comes when the worst possible version of a situation finally shows itself. You stop guessing, stop hoping, stop negotiating with reality like it's a customer service agent who might give you a refund. You just see. And once you see, you can decide. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Leo. What are you gonna do? Simple question. Huge answer. I thought about the last year. All the conversations that went nowhere. All the careful silences. All the nights lying awake next to someone who already felt gone. And a sentence formed in my mind with surprising calm. She doesn't need a week to decide. She already did. The week was just logistics, emotional paperwork. Time to arrange the exit without looking like the villain. And here's the part that surprised me most. Once I understood that, I stopped feeling powerless. Because if the decision was already made, then waiting was optional. I picked up the phone and typed slowly, "I'm not going to wait, I will act." Leo replied almost instantly, "You sure?" "Yeah," I wrote, "I'm sure." I put the phone down, and for the first time in months my thoughts felt quiet enough to hear clearly. Not what I hoped would happen, not what I feared, just what needed to be done. Just decisions, final in a way that didn't require anger. By the time we drove back home the next evening, the decision inside me had already settled into something steady and quiet. The house felt different without her. No careful listening for tone, no silent calculations before speaking, no background tension humming through ordinary rooms, just space. Real space. The kind you don't notice until it finally appears. The kids ran inside like nothing in the universe had changed, immediately arguing about whose turn it was to choose a movie. Normal life doesn't pause for emotional events. I moved through the evening calmly. Dinner, baths, bedtime stories read in a voice steady enough that nobody asked the questions I wasn't ready to answer yet. When the house finally went quiet, I sat alone at the kitchen table with my laptop open and the room lit only by the soft glow of the screen. I started with the simplest step: information. Search results filled the screen in neat, indifferent rows. Family lawyers, consultation hours, careful professional language about transitions and next chapters. Amazing how gently the legal world describes the collapse of a marriage. I chose one almost at random. Not because the choice didn't matter, because the direction already did. The call lasted 12 minutes. Her voice, calm, measured, experienced, never once sounded surprised, which told me everything about how common this story really was. "Yes," she said after listening quietly, "you should begin preparing immediately." No sympathy, no judgment, just clarity, delivered like instructions. I thanked her, scheduled a consultation for the next morning, and ended the call. 12 minutes. Strange how quickly a life can change direction when someone finally tells the truth out loud. Next came the finances. Spreadsheets opened, accounts reviewed, documents quietly copied into folders with neutral names that revealed nothing to anyone who might glance at the screen. Every number told a small, unemotional story. Years of work, shared plans, trust translated into monthly statements and long-term savings. I moved slowly, carefully, like someone packing fragile glass. Midnight passed without ceremony. The house remained silent around me, holding that strange stillness that only exists after difficult decisions have already been made. At some point, I noticed something unexpected. My hands weren't shaking. No anger burning in my chest. No desperate thoughts racing in circles. Just focus. For months, I'd been living inside uncertainty. And uncertainty is exhausting in a way nothing else is. Around 1 in the morning, my phone buzzed softly against the table. Her name on the screen. For a moment, I just looked at it. Not with hope, not with fear. More like curiosity towards something that already belonged to the past. "How are the kids?" No greeting, no explanation, no mention of the week she was using to think. Just logistics. I typed back, "They're okay, sleeping." 3 dots appeared, paused, vanished. Then, "Thank you, nothing else." I waited a few seconds, not expecting more. Nothing came. The conversation ended exactly the way the marriage had been ending for months. Quietly, politely, without anything real being said. I set the phone down and looked around the dark kitchen. This room had seen birthdays, late-night talks, ordinary mornings, small arguments that once felt important. Now it just held silence. And for the first time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt clear. I closed the laptop slowly. Tomorrow there would be a lawyer, documents, decisions that couldn't be undone. But tonight there was only quiet and the steady realization settling deeper with every passing minute. I wasn't waiting for her to choose anymore. I was already choosing for myself. And somewhere inside that calm, something stronger than anger was taking shape. Resolve. The next day, I did three things. I dropped the kids off, I smiled at people like my life wasn't quietly changing shape, and I walked into a lawyer's office with the calm of a man who's already tired of surprises. The lawyer wasn't dramatic. She didn't pity me. She just asked the right questions in the right order, like she'd seen this movie 1,000 times and knew exactly where the plot always tries to lie. Do you share accounts? Yes. Any big purchases recently? No. Any reason to believe she's preparing to leave? I almost laughed. Besides announcing it like a calendar invite at my birthday dinner? She nodded once. No reaction. Just notes. Protect the finances. Document everything. Don't accuse her. Don't warn her. Then she added, almost casually, and assume she's already planned more than she's told you. That line sat with me all day. That night I didn't spy. I didn't do anything cinematic. I just did what any adult does when they feel their life slipping. I checked facts, bank statements, shared email for bookings, a few logins that still worked because habit is stronger than caution. It didn't take long. Hotel reservation, her name, dates, a confirmation number. The same dates as her week to think. I stared at the screen for a full minute, waiting for rage to show up like it was supposed to. It didn't. What showed up instead was something colder. So this wasn't space. This was scheduling. I took screenshots, saved PDFs, put them into a folder I named something boring enough to survive any curious glance. Then I closed the laptop and just sat there, listening to the quiet house. Around midnight, Leo texted again. Any update? I sent him one sentence. It's a hotel week, not a thinking week. He replied with a message that contained a lot of words. Support, anger, suggestions, the whole friendship package. I didn't need any of it. Not because I'm made of stone. Because I'd crossed a line inside myself where arguments stop working. By the time her week was almost over, I had the documents ready. The night before she was supposed to come back, she texted, "Can we talk tomorrow? I want to try." Try. Funny word. Like this was a gym routine she'd finally decided to commit to. I replied, "Sure. Come by. We'll talk." Short, neutral, calm. Then I put my phone down and slept. Not well, not peacefully, but without that old sick feeling of waiting for someone else to decide whether I was still worth keeping. She came back in the afternoon. No drama, no tears on the doorstep. "Hi," she said gently. "Hi." She stepped inside slowly, eyes moving through the house as if checking whether anything had changed. Everything had, just not in ways you could see. "The kids?" she asked. "With my parents. I thought we should talk first." She nodded, relieved. Less witnesses. Easier script. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same place where ordinary mornings used to happen, where small arguments once felt important, where silence had lived for months. For a moment, she just looked at me, like she was searching for the old version of my face. "I did a lot of thinking," she began quietly. "I needed space to understand what I was feeling, and I don't want to lose this family." I didn't interrupt, just listened. "I know things have been hard," she continued. "I know I pulled away, but I want to work on it. Therapy, time, whatever it takes. I'm ready now." She leaned forward slightly, voice softer. "I want to give us another chance." There it was, carefully delivered, emotionally polished, just believable enough to sound sincere. She waited, for relief, for gratitude, for the version of me who would accept hope like water in a desert. What she got instead was silence, the kind that doesn't negotiate. Her eyes shifted, searching my face for movement that wasn't there. "Say something," she whispered. I folded my hands on the table, calm enough to surprise even myself. "I'm glad you figured out what you want," I said. Relief flashed across her face, quick, bright, premature. Then I added gently, "I figured it out too." The relief disappeared, replaced by something tighter, careful. "What does that mean?" she asked. Instead of answering, I stood, walked to the counter, and picked up a thin folder. Nothing dramatic, just paper. I placed it on the table between us and sat down again. She looked at it, not touching. "What is this?" "My decision," I said quietly. Her fingers opened the folder slowly, like the speed might change the contents. First page, divorce filing. Next, custody framework. Then financial separation. Behind that, printed confirmations, dates, the hotel reservation she thought lived only inside a private week. Her breathing changed first, shallow, uneven. "This isn't," she started, then stopped. Silence filled the kitchen again, but this time it felt different, sharper, real. "You filed?" she said finally. "Yes." Her eyes lifted to mine, disbelief breaking through the calm mask. "You didn't even talk to me." "You already had the week," I said. "I used mine." Anger arrived next, fast, defensive. "You went through my things? You're spying on me now?" "No," I said evenly. "I'm accepting reality. That photo doesn't mean anything. The hotel does." Her mouth opened, closed, words searching for somewhere safe to land. "It wasn't like that," she said, quieter now. I was confused. I needed space. I was trying to understand. "You understood enough to book a room," I replied. Tears came then, sudden and bright, like emotion could still rewrite facts. "I said I want to fix this," she whispered. "Why are you doing this?" That question hung between us longer than the others. Because the real answer wasn't anger, wasn't revenge. It was simpler. "Because you already left," I said. "You just wanted to come back safely if the exit didn't feel right." Her face broke in a way I hadn't seen before. Not dramatic, just exposed. "That's not true." I didn't argue, didn't list evidence, didn't raise my voice. Minutes passed, quiet, irreversible. Finally she asked, barely audible, "So that's it?" I looked at her, the woman I'd built years with, shared children with, tried to hold on to long after holding stopped working, and I felt nothing sharp, just clarity. "Yes," I said. More tears, softer now, not fighting, just falling. After a while she closed the folder carefully, like respect still mattered even at the end. "I didn't think you'd do this," she said. "I know." That was the problem. She stood slowly, unsteady in a way she hadn't been when she walked out a week earlier. At the door she stopped, back turned. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I never wanted to hurt you." She opened the door and stepped outside. No slammed exit, no last speech. The door closed softly behind her. I stood alone in the quiet house, listening to nothing in particular, feeling the strange stillness that comes only after the hardest decision is already made. Not victory, not relief, just peace. And for the first time in a very long while, the silence around me didn't feel empty. It felt like mine. She needed 7 days to choose her future. I only needed 1 to choose mine. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.